Hello and welcome to another video from Dazatron's Diorama Llama. And so in this video I'm going to make a new head sculpt for this Masterverse Skeletor. So I'd recently picked up the Mattel Creations Pan 4 and just completely enamoured with this figure. I really enjoyed their Battle Cat, which was released I think it was a couple of years ago now. And I saw this online and thought, yeah, I'll pick this up, and just was blown away by the packaging, the sculpt, the paint finish, the glass eyes. Just a fantastic figure. So it's given me the impetus to go back to this Masterverse figure that I picked up a while ago and make a new head sculpt. So I had made a previous attempt at this because I wasn't happy with the Masterverse head. It just didn't remind me really of the Filmation Skeletor that I grew up with. So you can see here I made a Sculpey version, and I was reasonably happy with the sculpt, but as you can see it is pretty big compared to the Masterverse body. And I thought, yeah, okay, I need to have another shot at this, but it's taken me a while to get round to it. So rather than using Sculpey, I'm using something called Cos Clay. So Cos Clay is very similar to Sculpey in the sense that it very much feels like plasticine, but you can cure it in the oven. And the nice difference between Cos Clay compared to Sculpey is that it still has a little bit of a flexible finish, so it's not completely solid like Sculpey is. It's got a bit of bend to it, which I think makes it a little bit more suitable, especially when I want to kind of fit this on the ball joint and so on. So I'm just going to soften up the clay just by kind of rolling it and kneading it, and it does soften up really easy. And as I say, it's a little bit like using plasticine. So it's, once it kind of gets to room temperature and warms up with your hands, it can get quite soft, and it's very easy to not only manipulate but to actually damage the work that you've done. So you have to be quite careful with it. So just spending a little bit of time just kind of forming the kind of basic hood shape. You have that little bit of a kind of a fold at the back of Skeletor's hood. So just checking the size compared to the original version that I made. And I'm just making a hole for the ball socket. But of course I need to put on the accessories like his cloak just so I can see how this fits really. So I'm just spending a little bit of time just pinching the base of the hood. One, this will make it a bit easier to cure because it's a little bit thinner. And two, hopefully it will start to create some of those kind of folds and bends that you would see in a hood. So I'm just taking one of these loop tools. So these are kind of clay shaping tools. Really easy to pick up from lots of places online, and you can get a kind of variety of shapes, but they're just really good for just kind of smoothing out regular clay or Sculpey or any kind of polymer clay really. So I'm just trying to get an idea of the head size. You can see I've got my reference there on my phone. So that's looking okay. So now I'm going to start to kind of pull out some of the details. So I'm just creating a quick sculpt first, just to get an idea where the features would go. And then again, I can just start checking the size. The nice thing about using these tools is that you can use the clay that's already there to kind of create the cheekbones and the eye sockets. So just by pulling down the eye socket, it's then created excess clay to make the cheekbones. So I tried this out. It's looking a little bit small for my liking. So I've decided to go, back to square one and just kind of smooth that out. And that is the beauty of using this clay, is that if you do make a mistake, it's really easy just to kind of take that back, smooth it out and start again. So I'm just going to put in some of those kind of folds. And then I'll start to think about the size of the kind of skull face again. So just going to fit that in place. And then go back to just getting the initial kind of opening of the hood. So I'm pushing in a little bit deeper here, just to kind of create a bit more of a recess. And that's creating the edge of the hood. So I've tried to make the opening a little bit bigger this time. And then again, I'm going to do a rough sculpt just to get an idea where the eye sockets would be. So I'm pulling down the eye socket, and you can see that's creating then that kind of bulge of material, so I can then use that for the cheekbones. So I'm just kind of creating an upside down V shape to create the kind of the nose, or the hollow where the nose would be. And on the Filmation Skeletor, the cheekbones are quite pronounced. So I'm just trying to create that kind of iconic, it's almost like a laughter line. It's where the kind of cheekbones connect to the jawbone. So I'm just pushing in with the end of the tool, and now creating the mouth shape and the sides of the jawbone. And already this is starting to look better than my previous attempt. And I'm happy with the size of this face. So I'm just pushing around the chin a little bit deeper, so we can kind of create those shadows, so it looks like the skull is kind of just levitating inside the hood. So this is another kind of shaping tool, but it's got kind of a rubber end. You can get these in various sizes, but really good again for kind of smoothing out. And because it's got a tapered end to it, you can really get into some of those smaller spaces and add those kind of fine details. Now, although I've edited this video quite considerably to what it was before, it's still quite a long video because I want to include as much of the process as possible. But a huge amount of this process is actually just kind of smoothing things out and trying to get those fine details. So that's the time consuming bit, really. So I'm just trying to smooth out the cheekbones. And the difficult bit here, because it's such a small sculpt really, is the teeth. So when you get to that part, you're going to have to be really careful, and you do need quite a steady hand for that. So I'm just adding in some more folds to the hood. You can see it's quite easy to smooth out with your fingers as well. So there's a big difference there between the original size of my earlier attempt to this one. So I've noticed that the jawbone is a little bit too recessed, so I'm going to kind of pull that out a little bit more. So I'm just using the loop tool again, just to try and get inside the jawbone and just kind of pull it out a little bit. And I can just kind of flatten some of those areas out using the kind of rubber shaping tool. So you can see how it's kind of dragging down some of the clay. And that just gives me a nicer finish really. Okay, so now I've got a little bit more space for where the lip would be. I can just kind of create the edge of where the gums would be, and just start to add very gently, just kind of tapping the clay with the tool, just kind of creating those lines of the teeth. And of course I would need to do this for the lower jaw as well. Okay, so I've got most of the sculpt finished in terms of the face. Still needs a little bit of refining. So I'm just going to take some excess clay really from the hood here. Just to, one, give a bit more shape to the hood, to make it look like it is folds of material. But as I'm putting off just small bits of clay, I can then reuse that clay on the kind of face to kind of just make some areas of the face a little bit more pronounced. So just pressing a little bit harder with the loop tool, and you can see the friction just pulls off some of that excess clay. And of course I can smooth all that out a little bit later. So I'm just taking a really small amount of the kind of offcuts and just rolling those up so I can make the kind of the eyebrows a bit more pronounced. And then again using the loop tool just to blend those in, and it blends really easy. You just need a soft touch. And by just making those kind of, when I'm calling them eyebrows, a bit more pronounced, it just kind of creates that look and a more defined kind of pose, I suppose, or expression to the face, because it creates those shadows in the eye socket. So I wasn't happy with the size of the nose. Again, just needed to be a bit more pronounced. And I think that's looking better already. So I just want to push the folds of the material that's around the face, push that right back, because again those shadows then will kind of just emphasize the jawline. One of the things that happens sometimes as you start to handle this clay and it gets really soft, you can see here it started to almost fuse itself with the actual figure. So it's just where I've been holding the clay. So I do need to loosen that up, otherwise I could end up damaging my sculpt. So I'm just very gently just trying to ease the head off. You can see how it's actually stuck quite securely. So I do need to do a bit of damage repair here and just kind of reshape the bottom of the hood in particular. And of course I'm going to have to remove the head anyway when it goes in the oven, so I can't leave it on the figure. The difficulty with actually holding the head sculpt with your hands rather than having it on, say, a stick or having it on the figure itself, is that because the clay is quite soft, it really picks up your kind of fingerprints, and you don't want that kind of finish, particularly once it hardens. So it is worthwhile taking a bit of time just to kind of smooth over the surface and make sure you haven't got any of those kind of fingerprints. So you notice here I've put the head back onto the figure, but just much looser. And then I can spend a bit more time again just smoothing out the outer surface and just making sure it looks how I want it to look. So here we go. That is pretty much my Skeletor head sculpt finished. And I'm really happy with this one. I think I've managed to capture the expression. It's still a little bit big for my liking, but as you can see here, it's much smaller than the original. And in some ways, I quite like the fact that it's oversized. It gives more of that kind of cartoon feel. So I'm going to stick with that. I did just want to kind of check the profile against some actual skull images. Now I could make the kind of the mouth a little bit more pronounced, but I think I'm going to leave it as it is for now. So I now need to bake this. So do check the instructions on the cost clay. For me, it's 135 degrees Celsius. I did pick up one of these kind of thermometers, which are really useful because sometimes it's quite hard to tell what the actual temperature is inside your oven. So I would recommend picking up one of those thermometers for the oven. I'm just adding some softened clay just in the bottom of the head, just so I can get a nice tight finish, because obviously as I've been sculpting the head and moving it around, that ball socket has kind of widened a little bit. So just adding a little bit extra clay inside would just kind of make it a little bit tighter. So I did my last moving out and it's been in the oven. It took about an hour and a half for this to bake, and now I can handle this with no problem. I'm not going to get any more fingerprints on there. It's nice and solid, but as I said, it's a little bit flexible as well. So I'm using the Vallejo paints, which are just miniature kind of model paints, and they're nice because they're much thinner than regular acrylics, which is what you want really. You don't want to put on thick paint. So I've just primed the skull part of the face with white, and then I've gone over that with yellow. I only added one layer of white, whereas actually if I was going to do this again, I think I would add 2 layers of white, because the yellow is quite a tough colour to get a nice coverage. So I had to end up adding 2 or 3 layers of the yellow to get it as kind of smooth as I wanted it. Now, you haven't seen me mix up the purple. I left my recording off, apologies for that. Now you can see here, I haven't quite got that kind of bright purple that I wanted. So I've tried to match the purple instead with the other parts of kind of Skeletor's costume and go for a darker purple. And here is the finished Skeletor with his kind of custom sculpted head, and I'm really pleased with this one. I think it looks much better than my original version, and hopefully it's giving you some inspiration yourselves. See you again soon.